Hi, and welcome to episode 95 of the Heartland Knits podcast. My name is Vicki, but you can find me as Heartland Knits on Ravelry and Instagram. And today is Sunday, February 15th, 2015. This is going to be a pretty quick show. I'm actually bribing myself to do it. I went to Starbucks and got some chai, which I don't usually do, so this is my bribe to get the recording done. No reason in particular, I just was feeling lazy, like I didn't want to. So I want to get it done before this cools down completely. I don't have that much to show you. It's not like I worked on lots of different things, so I don't have a lot of big progress to show you on anything. But I'll start out and I'll show you what's on my needles. I picked up a project that I started. It was my first big knitting project of the year, and then it kind of got put aside, and I picked that back up, and that is the handspun sweater that I am doing out of some yarn I spun a long time ago. This is Wensleydale from Lisa Sousa in the Jonquil colorway, and I started out knitting this, and then I had to spin more yarn for it. The yarn hasn't finished being spun, but I wanted to pick it back up and get going on it again, so that would make me have more incentive to finish spinning the yarn, and also so that it got finished before spring. And so I think the last time you saw it, I had started out double stranding the yarn, and then I had done a great big swatch of part of a sleeve with just a single strand of yarn because I was worried that I would have enough yardage. And I'm just kind of making this up as I go along. So I went back, and so I have another sleeve here, or part of a sleeve, double stranding the yarn, because I really feel like in my mind's eye that I want a kind of a bigger, thicker, cozier sweater. And I thought it would help to even out the color variations. This was a painted roving, and it is doing that. I don't mind if there are slight variations, but you know. And I also thought it would help to even out the sort of size variations in the handspun, and I guess it's doing that. I wrote to a friend of mine, that when I was kind of knitting this, that knitting a handspun, she's knit a couple handspun sweaters, and I said, this is hard because, I'm a swatcher. I did a big swatch, so I figured I knew kind of my gauge, and I knew it's handspun, so it could vary a little bit. But I got kind of, using the needle sizes that I thought I was, had swatched for and stuff, and I got to about here, and it started feeling, and it was double stranded, it's like a worsted weight. I got to about here, and it started feeling, on that size needles I was using, it was feeling more like an Aran weight, and it was not as pleasant to knit. It was feeling kind of stiff and firm, and I was worried that it was going to be too wiry, because Wensleydale the yarn is spun to a kind of a 2-ply fingering weight, and but anyway, so then I switched up a needle size to do the top part of the sleeve, and then I was worried that it was going back and forth. So anyway, I blocked out this sleeve. That's why you can see the stitch pattern pretty well on it, just to see sort of if I was getting way out of control. And actually, I can tell that I did this on a larger needle, and I might rip it back down to here and redo this on the smaller needle, because I think it was, blocking out okay, and it wasn't feeling too stiff. So anyway, so this is what I did. I kind of got going on it, and then I laid it down to block it out, and then I didn't kind of pick it back up. So I want to get back and going on it, and then hopefully this week get some dedicated spinning in with the rest of the yarn, because I want to, if I'm double stranding it, I want to use kind of the new one that I am spinning along with kind of one of my other, the other ones that I have spun from a long time ago, so that maybe will be a little more consistent through the body. So then I have another project that I didn't even bring over here. I haven't showed it in a couple of weeks, but I did a little bit of work on the egg bohos. Finished up the short rows, and then I'm still working on the raglan shaping of the yoke. It doesn't look that much different than it has before, so I just kind of left it where it was. When I get to dividing for the front and back and the sleeves, maybe then I'll show it to you again. And then the other thing that I worked on, I actually just started the actual knitting of it last night, but I read through this book, which is The Two-End Knitting by Anna May Ling, and this is twined knitting. It's also called two-end knitting, and when I bought this book a couple of years ago, they had a DVD that you could also get that went along with it. We got to watch the DVD. It's very good. It's a Swedish woman, a very skilled twined knitter, doing using that technique, and then she's speaking, but you can't hear her. It's overdubbed in English. And it was really interesting. There are 3 new cast-ons, and I love learning new cast-ons, and then all the different things in the twine knitting. So I started a pair of mittens last night, and I'm using the yarn that it looks just white, that I said I was going to use. This is Blackberry Ridge merino or woolen silk. It's a fingering weight. And I used one of the new cast-ons, and so I just have this much. I don't know that it's going to show because, but it has kind of a contrasting color that you use. You don't have to use that. And then you do this little bit of kind of patterns, and then this is the twined knitting. So it's really interesting. It's called twine knitting because you have a center pole ball, and you use one strand from the outside, one strand from the inside. This is secured on here. I just have this little, it's like a little pin. In the video she uses just a big darning needle, and you do this, you like secure, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to do this. You kind of go through and twist those around and then push it down through so that I can hold this up from there, because kind of at the end of every round at least you have to kind of separate your strands and let this untwist and let the ball untwist. So if the ends are secured onto it, you can just lift it up and they will go. If you've ever done a Latvian braid and you know how it twists and twists and twists and twists, that's what happens. And that's why every so often you have to lift it, let it untwist, because the 2 yarns, you are purposely twisting them. Except in a Latvian braid, when you're doing a mitten, you twist and twist and twist one way, and then you go the next round and it untwists it all. You don't do that. It just keeps twisting, twisting, twisting. So if you can, I hope it would show. This top part just looks like stockinette from the outside. And then on the inside, it has these kind of horizontal lines. And that is the 2 ends, twisting on each other. So you're doing an actual like regular knit stitch, and both yarns, so when you're just knitting, both yarns are in the back and you're doing actual knit stitch, but instead of when you're doing stranded knitting, you know, if you have one in each hand or whatever, kind of one yarn always stays on the bottom and one yarn always stays on the top. It's, you know, stranded around. This one, every time you go, or every time you pick up the yarn that's the farthest away and take that, and then the next time along, you take up the yarn that's farthest away and you pull it over the top, so that those two yarns are always twisting on top of each other. And it makes a really nice, it's not like an unpleasantly firm fabric. It's not as elastic as regular knitted fabric. And actually, this, I did it, so this is a figurine weight yarn, and I was using size 1 needles, which is what it said in the book to use, size 1 needles, but you were aiming for 10 stitches to the inch. I usually get 10 stitches to the inch on size 0 needles, but I went with the ones because I thought, well, maybe with this technique, everything gets tightened up more. And I know this isn't much of a sample to actually measure, but I think I might do another little piece and see if size zeros are better, because I mean, for a mitten, you can see that this is like pretty big around my wrist, and it's also going to have increases for a thumb gusset, so if that would be a pretty big mitten. So I'm going to try to do another one on size zeros and just see if that's better. So it's twisting, 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 which is, I think, why people always say they don't like to do it. But then you just kind of left it after the end of every round. I kind of separate the strands and you know, let it turn and untangle. So then I don't know if it's going to show down here. It's got this really pretty like patterning on it, and that is done. You've got 2 strands of yarn going at the same time, except on that one you have one of the strands is sitting in the front like you would have it for purling. One strand is sitting in the back, so you will purl a stitch but leave that strand in the front, and then you'll knit a stitch, and then the next stitch you'll purl, so that little kind of strand of fabric or strand of yarn is sitting across, and you can make patterns, and then sometimes you take it back according to pattern, you know, if you want it to you know, have some little bit of plain knitting in between it and stuff. So that was really fun. It's called Crook Stitches, and yeah, I really like it. It's, you know, little tiny needles, little tiny gauge. What's not to love? So it was really fun. I do want to do like another thing and see if my gauge would be the size, you know, make the size better. But and you don't have to have this like contrasting color to start out with. I was learning, this is one of the new cast-ons that I learned. There's this one. There's kind of like their really basic cast on. For all 3 cast-ons, you use 3 strands of yarn. So this has got the kind of making the decorative edge, and then the 2 strands that you are going to use continuing up in the twine knitting. And then the third one is one that I learned, I think it's one that I learned at camp. I have to see, because that's in a book that I don't have, but it makes it was using like 3 colors, and it makes a braided cast, like a Latvian braid, but it starts with it. It's really, really pretty, especially if you have, you know, 3 colors. The green that I used was the tiny little bit left that I had from those green chickadee mitts that I made before Christmas, just because I wanted to use a contrasting color, but I didn't want it to be like a hand-dyed color, just in case it bled, and that it would be on this white mitten. A lot of the ones that you see in the books and what she was using in the video was bright red, which is like kind of the traditional one. And then these are all the ends of, you leave really long ends and you braid it when you're finished. And so the mittens have little braids at the ends, and that's how they deal with having the ends. You don't have to weave them in. So, yeah, I really enjoyed working on this, and hope to do it some more. It's slow going, but it was a lot of fun. So for off the needles, I have something off the needles. It's probably not what you're thinking. I didn't finish the gloves. I haven't even ordered the yarn to finish the gloves because I got caught up in the what else should I order with that skein of yarn, because I can't just order one skein of yarn. It would get so lonely on its way here. So I was trying to decide what else to order. So I am going to order it, and I will finish knitting those gloves. But I finished my owl sweater. So let me go and I'm going to go put it on, and I'll be right back. Ta-da! Owls is reknit and finished again. So I ended up knitting on this a lot last week, and I finished it up, did the grafted the new body onto the old yoke, and that worked out fine. And the reason why I had to reknit the body from the bottom up instead of just putting all those, cutting off the body and then putting those stitches on needles and knitting it down, is if you tried to do that, you would be half a stitch off. And probably right there is not where you want to have a line like that. But when you're knitting from the body up and then you're grafting it on, you don't have that issue. So I will stand up and try to show you how it turned out. So I am much, much happier with it like this than how it was before. It had waist shaping in the back, but then it had this kind of kooky side shaping, which it was not good. It's much improved. I like it much more than I did before. It has a chance of actually being worn now, where it didn't before. It's still probably not my favorite sweater. There's something about the neckline I'm not real happy with still, and I don't know. It's not my favorite. I know it's like super popular and there are bazillions out there and stuff. It's just not my favorite. Anyway, it's redone and it's reknit. I don't know if it will ever be my favorite sweater. It could just be because I had to knit it twice, and so I'm a little peeved at it. And if it sits for a while, and I'll be happier with it. I don't know. There's something I don't like about the neck. I don't know. But it's done. So I have to go take this off because it's really warm, because it's bulky yarn. And if I will just quickly go through, this was Quince & Co. Puffin yarn in the Belize color. And I knitted it twice onto size 10 3/4 needles. I knitted the body twice. The yoke was just once, but the yoke was the fun part. So anyway, it's finished, but it's warm, so I'll be right back. So I also did a little spinning this week. Actually, this weekend. I did go to Madrona, and another friend of mine who wasn't going to Madrona suggested that when I go out there, I usually meet up with a bunch of friends. We've known each other for a long time, and so she suggested that all of us that were at home kind of do a special Madrona project, knitting project, or when she was starting a new kind of scarf, and I thought I didn't really want to start another knitting project, but I had something it's one of those things that's been sitting around that I've wanted to spin for a long time and just never have. And that was 4 years ago when I was supposed to go to Madrona and I had to cancel at very short notice. I think I canceled on like Monday and I was supposed to be there Wednesday or something, and I had to cancel because it's a long story, but it was a really big disappointment and stuff. And so that year, a bunch of friends bought stuff and sent it to me from the market that, because I had to miss and I was so disappointed. And so one of my friends sent me this really pretty bat from the Artful You. She always brings really pretty bats to Madrona. And it was kind of, I don't remember if I've ever shown it on the podcast, but it was kind of blues and grays and like teals. And it was called Mission Straits. And the little card didn't have like all the things that were in it, but I'm sure it had silk. I think there was some brown alpaca. There were mohair locks. There was wool and stuff. So I decided I wanted to spin that bat up. And part of the reason why I had never spun it before was because it was so pretty and I didn't want to sort of wreck it. And that kind of just defeats the purpose of spinning. For this, I decided I wanted to just sit down and play and just enjoy the experience. I didn't want to have to worry about how it was going to turn out. And so when I first sat down, I thought, well, maybe I will want to do like a thickish single because it had like the little mohair locks. I thought I don't want to like try to make it be a perfectly, straight uniform, yarn. And so I was going to spin a thickish single. So this is my yarn. I finished the whole thing. So anyway, I, was spinning and just kind of letting it go, and it was really fun. I started it Thursday night and I spun some on Friday night, finished the single up, and it was such a fun spinning experience. I spun this on my Ash for Joy on the biggest whirl and kind of just let it go, and it was kind of thick and thin, and I just kind of let it, play with it and stuff. So aren't the colors pretty? And so then Saturday, I, took a look at it and I decided that there was probably really, in the thinner sections, there was probably too much twist in there to leave it as a singles. And so I decided, well, it would be fun to do like a spiral and just use a thread to ply it with. And at first I thought, well, it would be kind of to do like maybe a sparkly thread kind of, but I didn't want to leave the house because it was so cold yesterday. Cold, like really cold and windy and just evil. So I didn't want to leave the house. So I thought, okay, I'll just use some thread because Little Mom was a sewer. And so there's like a ton of spools of thread that she had. And so I kind of found one that was the perfect sort of teal, and I did that, and I ended up going through, because they weren't full spools of thread, I ended up going through 3 or 4 different little spools that just had a little bit on them, from like, there was like a kind of a darker teal and a lighter teal and a like a navy and stuff. So it's very, different that way. You can see it's got kind of big, looser sections. And so anyway, if I was, going to do this over, I would probably have put a little bit even more, I would have put more twist in the single so that, because then when you're plying it, I was trying to shoot it through as fast as I could, and I was using the Wildflyer on the Ash for Joy, and it just could not get it just was not going in as fast as I wanted it to. So anyway, that's how I did it. Oh, and when I was plying it with a thread, so I took a lot of spinning classes with Patsy Z, and her technique. I went back to like using her technique when you're spinning a spiral with using thread. What she does is puts the spool of thread in a little kind of sandwich baggie, and then puts that around your wrist, so that the thread is coming out of the little bag, so that wherever this hand goes, that little spool of thread will go, and you can keep control of it. And I did that, and I spin right hand forward, so it's on my left wrist, but it would be the opposite. And so that you can hold on to the thread, and then I had the singles on a Lazy Kate, a Lazy Kate. So anyway, that was my fun spinning, and I ended up with 140 yards, and it's a really soft, squishy yarn. So I think this will make like a really kind of pretty hat, you know, and that it won't matter if it's loose and bumpy or anything. So anyway, this kind of got me enthused. You know, I never did get the Valentine yarn spun, but I still really want to. So this kind of got me into thinking about, you know, spinning that up. So first I want to get that yellow so that I can finish the sweater, and then maybe I'll go on to the pink. So anyway, so that is all I have for you. It ended up to be longer than I thought it was going to be again, and my chai is now cold. It will have to go get heated up in the microwave, I guess. But I hope you all have a good week, and until I see you next week, from my heart to yours, happy knitting.